Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive talking about COVID-19, aka the coronavirus, and the impact that it could potentially have on the National Football League. Before I get into that in particular, I just want to first extend my condolences to anyone that's been impacted in any way, shape, or form by the coronavirus. It's a pandemic now. It's to the point where we have a national state of emergency. A lot of institutions are being shut down. I don't want to turn this channel, because this channel, as you all know, is a sports channel, more specifically an NFL channel, and it's going to remain as such. I won't do things like this very often, but this is not a usual case here. This is very unique, and the set of circumstances surrounding it and the climate that it has created, I think, prompts me to do something like this. I just want to make sure that you're taking the proper precautions. I know some of you out there probably don't think this is as big of a deal. Some of you think this is hyped up by the media and it's media driven, and whatever you think, that's your preference. I'm not going to sit here and preach to you or try to convince you otherwise. I just want to make sure that you're taking the proper precautions. For those of you who are alarmed by this, this is a serious deal, whether you want to believe it or not. I've never seen anything like this, at least not in this capacity. Even 9/11 didn't stop sports. And I know sports isn't the end all be all, but it's kind of the perfect storm when this kind of started to transpire and take place, because had this happened in July, it's a big deal still, but not as big of a financial burden on the sports world per se. And sports drives a lot of economics in this country. And the economy is going to take a beating with this. And I'll give you a quick tip. When this thing bottoms out, you should buy stocks, okay? Purchase your stocks. Buy low, okay? Sell high. That's the name of the game. It's going to hit rock bottom at some point, and you're going to have a chance to get in at a really low rate, whatever it is you're trying to get in on. I'm telling you right now, go ahead and get in if you can. But that's another conversation for another day. There are a couple of precautionary measures you can take. There's some things outside of of course, washing of your hands, not touching your mouth, your nose, or your eyes with your hands, that sort of thing. But you know, there's the 10-second test. I know a lot of you have heard that one already, but I'll reiterate it if you haven't, where you take a deep breath for 10 seconds, you know, holding your breath. And if you don't feel any kind of burning sensation or any kind of discomfort or anything like that, then your lungs aren't compromised with fibrosis, which is what the coronavirus does. And so I'm not saying that you do not have corona, okay? But it's one of the ways you can at least make yourself feel a little bit more comfortable that you don't. I'm not saying that's the end all be all test, but it is a way to at least make you feel comfortable knowing that it's probably more likely than not that you don't. Now, if you have a discomfort, I'm not saying you do have corona, but it is a reason to be somewhat concerned. That being said, so there's a 10-second test that you can do. There's also drinking water every 15 minutes or so, because the coronavirus, what it tries to do is to attack your lungs, and it usually wants to get into your windpipe via your mouth. And a way to wash it down into your stomach, where your stomach acid will then take care of the virus and kill it altogether, is a way to continuously keep yourself safe as well. So that's another precautionary measure you can take to try to help yourself in these times where it can be very dangerous. But look, enough of that. All right. How can this impact the NFL? Because I've never seen anything like this. Even 9/11 didn't generate this kind of hysteria from a point where we're stopping all athletic events. March Madness has been canceled. I've never known March Madness to be canceled in my entire lifetime. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. You've canceled pretty much everything. Everything's put on hold. We're not quite Italy in terms of not having a functioning country right now. Like the country isn't shut down like Italy, but we're like I mentioned, we're at a state of emergency, and the NFL is the one league right now that, because of where they are in their season, being that they're in the off season, they're in their league year. I think that's the best way to address it. Where they are in their league year, opposed to the other leagues, they're the one that hasn't really been impacted that greatly by the coronavirus to this point. You got MLB, who was about to start their season here in the next week or so. They had to postpone that. You've got the National Hockey League, and they were right about to start their playoffs. All right, they were literally 2 weeks away or so from their playoffs getting underway. Obviously, their season has been put on ice. Did you see what I did there? Okay. The NBA obviously was, getting towards that point where we were going to start looking at games and how many games back this team was from the 8th seed, or that team from getting into a top 4 seed and getting a home playoff game. We were starting to get to that point where you're down to the final 15, 12, 10 games of the season. Obviously, they've been postponed and delayed for the unforeseeable future. And it got kicked off with them and Rudy Gobert and his whole situation. That's a train wreck there. But and then, as I mentioned, March Madness. And so it's really the perfect storm at the time that it happened. But for the NFL, they're looking around and saying, well, look, I feel bad for all these other leagues and all of the hardships that they're facing with this virus at the time that it's happening. But there is no good time for something like this to take place. But if you're the NFL, you're saying, phew, we're going to be just fine, because everything that the NFL really needs to do is during this period, they don't have to necessarily meet face to face to do it. So when you look at this situation right now, they got free agency coming up. They don't have to push it back because, to be honest with you, the teams now. I read a little snippet from Chris Sims, and this makes a ton of sense. And he pretty much said, look, the big ticket, free agents, the big item free agents, they don't need to meet with these teams. They would usually have these guys come in, take a physical, then sign the contract, that sort of thing. And they may ultimately still do that. I don't know if they will or not. But there's a thing called, fax machines. There's a thing called the internet and emails. And so there's ways to get these guys the contract in their hand. They can video chat back and forth. They can see the player put pen to paper, have it signed and sent back to the organization. They will have a copy. The player will have a copy. His agent will have a copy, that sort of thing. So the big ticket free agents don't necessarily have to meet with these teams in order to get their names signed on the dotted line and reach an agreement. It's the guys that needed to show up to these facilities, work out, or show up to these facilities, meet the coaching staff, sit down and talk to, different coaches around the building, those coaches talk to the player and get a feel for, is this guy the right fit at this current moment for our team? And I think that's the impact that you're going to see, is that after you get past the big ticket free agents, that next tier down and all the guys that kind of fall in line thereafter, they were the ones that really needed these meetings. The John Bostics of the world need to go meet with, a prospective team to see if he's a good fit or not. All right. So, it's those kind of guys that are going to be impacted by this. We'll see how teams, look to circumvent this whole situation, but they don't have to push back the start of the league year. There may be pressure from outside influences to do it, but there's really no reason to do so because, again, it's not a huge social gathering of people where you can still conduct business from a remote area if you're the NFL. So I don't see them pushing back the league year. And it's supposed to begin, I believe, on Wednesday this week. The tampering period for free agency begins on Monday, and that's where we'll start hearing about a lot of deals that are probably being consummated. And then after that, you got your road to the draft. Now, I think the no meeting with the prospects, those were big meetings for teams. You get 30 meetings that you can use with the prospective draftees. And you get to bring them in your building, work them out, or put them on the whiteboard, or just interview them in-depthly. You're not going to be able to do that. That may impact some teams and their draft boards potentially, but at the same time, again, I think it impacts you from a standpoint of getting to know that prospect and really being able to sit down and get a real feel for that guy. But, I mean, and sometimes you being across a table from someone or just getting a vibe and a sense from them in person does resonate and it does mean something, but you can still have conversations with these players via, some kind of mobile or streaming device or app. It's really not a big deal, to be honest with you. Not big enough to, again, push back the draft. I think the draft will be altered. I do firmly believe that this will not be open to the fans by the time we get to the draft. It's April, all right, and it's late April when the draft takes place. We're still in mid-March, so a lot of things could transpire by then. It could be worse by then. It could be better by then. I'm more leaning towards worse by then. I don't expect it to have gotten much better to the point where you feel comfortable enough to invite 1,000 people into Vegas and have them watch the draft live, but they can still do the draft. I don't think they need to have the players show up at the draft. I think you just have these teams call in to Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell can still show up in Vegas. He can still walk to the podium. It can still be business as usual from that standpoint. Teams will just have to phone in their pick, and the league office will have everything situated where they get the phone call, they get the card, they turn it into Goodell just as they normally would, and he walks up to the podium and he announces the pick. And then if you want to do this, and I don't know how desperate ESPN will be, because at this point, ESPN is desperate for content. So at this point, I don't know if ESPN and NFL Network and all these other networks and stations covering the draft are going to want to still go into these homes, and if these people are going to want to allow them into their homes with cameras and all of those things. But you could still film guys instead of them being at the green room, at the draft. You can go to different locations, send out camera crews to different places. Because what guys are going to be, top 15 picks or so, send them there and, have the camera on them as they hear their name called and all of that good jazz like they always do. So it can still be kind of business as usual. You just won't have the fans there and you won't have the players there. But I think you can still run the draft the way you need to. And I think what this whole process means is that you're going to have to rely on your scouts more so than ever. Now that you won't get a chance to sit down in a room, you may still get to, as I mentioned, talk to these prospects via some kind of app, or some kind of software. But in terms of being able to actually get to know these guys and sit in a room with them and get the feel and the vibe, does this guy really love football? That's where you're going to have to really rely on your area scouts, because these are the guys that have been watching these players for months upon months, possibly years, and have talked to people very close to these kids and understand their mental makeup, how they work, and all of the things that come with the package of that particular player. So these scouts are going to earn their money. This is where you really heavily have to rely on these area scouts to give you a full breakdown of what these guys are if you can't get a good feel for them, because you're not going to be able to sit down and meet with them in a room. So like I said, you can still put them on the whiteboard. Again, you can still do all of those things. The only missing element is getting in the room with them. All right. And for some people, that matters, to be able to sit down and look a guy in the eyes as you're asking him, does he love football? For some people, they need to be able to get a good read and sense. But to me, I don't see it impacting the start of the league year. I don't see it impacting the draft. So then the next thing you start getting to is these OTAs. I do see it impacting OTAs, however. Like, for instance, if you are a team with a new head coach, you get to start your OTAs early. Redskins, me being a Redskins fan, the Redskins were one of those teams that were going to be able to start their OTAs earlier because we have a new head coach in Ron Rivera. So our OTAs were going to start early April. All right. That to me is done. You're not going to see the NFL allow teams to gather their players. And you're talking about over 80, over 70, 80 players because, the rosters are expanded at this point. You're looking at 80, 90 guys showing up at a team facility. The NFL is not going to allow that. And they shouldn't allow that because these guys are spread out all over the country. It's not like they're all in one concentrated area. You got guys from Florida, guys from, California, guys from Oregon, all over the map coming to one place to gather. I just don't see the NFL allowing that to take place. So I think OTAs will be affected. And honestly, who gives a shit about OTAs, really? But I mean, the team does. Obviously, they feel like they're getting some things done there. But from a fan standpoint, who cares about OTAs, right? So I think OTAs will be affected. I don't think you'll see any team participating in OTAs prior to the draft, as the Redskins would have, being a team with a new head coach. And I don't think you're going to see teams participating in OTAs after the draft. All right. Now, I do know the NFL canceled their winter league meetings that were slated to take place, I want to say next week or so. But at the end of the day, I don't know what was going to be discussed there. Probably, some rules, things that they wanted to clean up, like the instant replay rule from last year. Probably get that shit the hell out of here. That kind of thing would have probably been discussed. Maybe they have some talks about the CBA and what they're feeling about, how this process is going. Those type of things, they can still have their conversations. They don't have to meet to do that. Anyway, so I think OTAs will be affected pre and post draft. But I think the real test for the NFL, and this is where you start getting into murky waters for the NFL, is when you start talking about training camp. That's when you really, as a fan of this beautiful game, that's when you start to get nervous. If this thing hasn't died down by July, late July, mid-July. Let's call it mid-July because at some point you've got to make an executive decision. You're not going to wait till the last minute to make an executive decision. So if this thing and I think the time frame will really be right around that deadline for teams that haven't reached a long-term agreement with their franchise taggee players. That deadline in July, which is usually mid-July, July 15th, 16th, usually every year. By that deadline, if things haven't gotten to a safe place where you can have social gatherings again safely, where you can have a meeting of 90 to 100 people, which having an NFL training camp essentially is. It's more than 100 people because you've got all the coaching staff there. You've got people working at the facility. You're talking about 500 to, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people at any given training camp. And then if you allow the fans in to watch, which you don't have to do, but if you do, you're talking about another, thousands and thousands of fans coming in, or hundreds, depending on where you are. So bottom line is training camp is the first sign of whether this season is going to go off without a hitch or not. Because without training camp, I think then you start getting into, then you get the Hall of Fame game. Will that be impacted? These are all things that we won't know about until we get to July. So I think right now the NFL is in a good spot because they don't have to really do anything. Unlike these other leagues who were actually in their season and were really impacted because they don't know when they're going to be able to get back on the diamond, the field. For a league like the XFL, who was just getting started, and we're already seeing their numbers plummet. And I told you this was going to happen. On my podcast, I said, look, don't talk to me about the XFL in the first or the second week or even the third week. There's going to be this honeymoon phase with the XFL. Everyone's going to have that curiosity factor. Talk to me about week 7 of the XFL, okay? Then bring me those numbers. And if they look anything like week 1 or week 2's numbers, or hell, even week 3's numbers, you got something. Those numbers have already tanked. All right. So this coronavirus for the XFL could be a kiss of death for their league. Now, they've already come out and said they're going to pay all their players and they're going to come back after this thing is done. I don't know, man. You know, for everyone else, MLB, NHL, NBA, hell, even the soccer leagues, for everyone else, they've been critically impacted. For the NFL, they've been somewhat shielded from this. And I guess we always talk about the proverbial shield. Protect the shield. Well, it seems like the shield is protecting itself right now. And really, this timing couldn't have been any better for the NFL. But eventually, you know, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. I don't think those tough decisions really come until July, to be honest with you. Because I don't think canceling OTAs is a tough decision. You just cancel OTAs. I mean, it is what it is. I think you don't get to any real tough decisions. I don't think they have to move back the start of the league year, which means you don't push back free agency. I don't think they have to do anything with the draft other than alter the way it takes place, meaning you don't let in fans, you don't have players come, that sort of thing. It's just Goodell announcing the picks, and you could still run the draft. The coverage can still be the same. You could just have your guys, if you're ESPN, instead of having guys go out to Vegas, you can still do that if you want and have those guys set up and have everybody tested. But really, you could just have these guys do the draft breakdown from a set in Bristol or California, wherever you're more comfortable having this take place. And just have Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and all of those guys at one central location in one of these ESPN headquarters and studios and do it from there. You know, and NFL Network, same thing. Your studio in California, you do it from there. But I don't know how that's going to go. But to me, you don't have to alter the draft in the way that it actually takes place, and the actual timing of it or anything. So I think the NFL is in a really good spot where you don't really see the impact, where you won't really start to see the impact until July, I believe, where you got to start making some tough decisions if this thing hasn't gotten to a point where you feel comfortable enough to allow everyone to start getting back to business as usual. So let's get to some comments real quick and we'll get out of here. I did see a super chat, so I'm going to read that one real quick from my man, John Saluter. Thank you for the super chat, John Saluter. Greatly appreciate it. He says, stay safe, brother. What will happen with free agency? Like I said, I don't expect anything to happen to free agency. I don't expect the NFL to push back the start of the league year because, again, a lot of these communications can be done via software or apps or, you know, things where they don't have to meet face to face. You know, you can have your agent right behind you as a player. You can have the agreement that the team drafted up sent to your agent via email. He can print it out, look over it, and then have your player sign. They can watch him sign. All right. They can they take a picture of it. This is how technology works. Take a picture of it, send it to the team. They can then print it out. And now they've got a copy of it. They watched him sign it, had the copy sent to them, and now they have it in their possession. And so now they've got their guy under contract for a 5-year, $45 million deal with, 22 of it guaranteed. So I think all of those things can still take place. So I don't really see anything really happening with free agency. Fernie Roke says, I hate how I can't get enough of my man Louie T. Such fire content. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Fernie. Greatly appreciate that. Black Al B says, what up, bruh? I've been waiting to hear your take on this. Yeah, man, it's crazy because let me just say this. I'm not really worried about myself. Like, if I contract corona, I'm young enough where my immune system should be able to do damage and take it out, and I'll be fine. All right. I'm more worried about my parents. I'm worried because the coronavirus is a lot more threatening to the older population. People that have medical concerns and then they're older, it's a triple whammy for them. So I'm more concerned with my parents, more so than anything else. I'm not worried about me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. But I'm more concerned about my parents. So this thing it's a real deal. You know what I mean? When your quality of life is impacted, like we were going to happy hour this weekend and we had to cancel that. Like when your quality of life is impacted, it's a real deal. And this thing is not a joke. You shouldn't take it as such. Even if you believe it's media driven, You know, I still see people not washing their damn hands. I'm like, you nasty son of a bitch. Like it when you do what I do and you see what you see every day, it just amazes me just how disgusting some people are. Anyway, Ali Side says, Lou, please stay safe out there, brother. Hopefully everything will be solved sooner rather than later. Amen to that. Reese says, just wanted to give you and yours well wishes, Lou. Stay safe. Hey, likewise to everyone out there, man. You guys stay safe. Take all precautionary measures necessary. If you don't have to go out, don't subject yourself to this. Again, most of you guys out there are young enough, but some of you are, of my viewers, you're not spring chickens. You have to really take this thing seriously. And as you get older, these types of things can take you out. So just, be careful and be mindful of not just you, as in the case of Rudy Gobert, who was negligent on all fronts. Don't just be thinking about yourself. Think about the other people you could be impacting. And that's the thing about this coronavirus that makes it so unique is that, we talk about, if you're sick, stay home. And then there's this other end of the spectrum where you're like, look, you fight through it. You don't just stay home for every damn thing. But with this thing, you're like, look, if you go to work and you have it, you can infect other people. So you have to be thinking about other people. And so if you're one of these people that thinks this is just a media-driven non-issue and you're going to continue to live life as you've always lived it, that's fine. But just know that you could be impacting those you care about. Even if you get it and you're going to be fine, you could be impacting those who are close to you. And remember, there's an incubation period with this thing where you could contract it, which is why doing the 10-second test is a good way to kind of not necessarily say you don't have it, but it helps you somewhat rule it out because you could have it and not see real symptoms for 7 days, anywhere from 5 to 7 days. There's an incubation period that it's dangerous that way. So just continue to protect yourself. William T says, hey, Louie T, be safe, man. Really love your show and Washington Panthers. Likewise, William T, man. You take care. You be safe out there. You and yours. The 20th Mike says, this thing is getting out of hand, Lou. We can just pray that this thing ends soon. I don't think it's going to end soon, but if we all do our part, we can minimize the damage and get back to normalcy faster, okay? Right now, what they're trying to guard against are the hospitals being overwhelmed by people needing to get tested. And because they're having to deal with so many people needing to get tested, you've got people who are really struggling with the coronavirus who have already contracted it, not getting the medical attention they need, and them potentially passing away or really suffering with this thing when they really wouldn't have to if the hospitals weren't so stressed and overworked and taxed. So that's why, this state of emergency is important. Everyone stay in the house and kind of give this situation a chance to breathe a bit and die down a little bit. And I'm like you said, it's getting out of hand. No March Madness, which is just insane. I can live without the NBA for a little while. I can deal with no MLB getting started, and I don't even watch the NHL. Some of you do, I don't. So, that stuff doesn't really bother me, but March Madness has been a staple in my life for the last, 15 years or so, where I've really started to hone in 3 TVs watching it. Now it's gotten to the point where I can watch it on my computer. I can watch it on 2 different TV screens and have it on 2 different mobile devices. So I'm watching 4 or 5 games at once. For that to not even take place, it's just insane. It's mind-boggling. 20th Mike says, XFL is also canceling the rest of the year. Someone said, so dang, no football at this time, and it was quality football too. Sucks. And like I said, that league could ill afford to have something like this happen. They were already struggling in terms of viewership, and now this takes place. They may not be able to rebound from this, to be honest with you. See. Azzy says, do you think COVID-19 may discourage players from contracts with teams in more susceptible areas of the country? I don't think so. I don't think that, players are really concerned about the coronavirus impacting their long-term earning potential. So, this is the thing with coronavirus. They've already said, look, in about a year, we should have a vaccine that can, just like the flu vaccine, pretty much help you steer clear of coronavirus. I don't know if there are going to be any guarantees with this vaccine, but it'll be a way to help you limit the chances of getting it at worst. And so if I'm a player, I'd like to think that this thing it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the CDC has already told us that multiple times, and I believe them. But if I'm signing a 5-year deal, I'm not really too pressed about, I'm in Oregon and there have been a ton of cases in Oregon. I wouldn't really put too much stock in that. So I'm not going to sign with the Seahawks. I don't think that's how these players are thinking about it. If you tell me that I can get my 5-year, $65 million deal, I'm going to sign it, And so, like I said, coronavirus, if detected in an early enough stage, and if you're physically healthy enough, you should be able to fight it off. I don't think these players are going to allow that to impact their decision making as far as where they sign. I don't really see that taking place, but I could be wrong. I just don't see that happening, though. Got another super chat from Curtis Owens. Appreciate the super chat, Curtis Owens, who writes, prayers to you and yours, #HTTR. Likewise. And you guys, like I said, just make sure you stay safe and kind of just lay low a little bit, man. Go to the store, load up. That's what we've done. Me and my fiance have done over the last couple days is we just loaded up, man. On a bunch of stuff, and she's out of work for the next couple of weeks. Hopefully you're able to continue working if you're in a field that allows you to work. A lot of these customer service fields, you're stuck because you can't take off of work. You can't shut it down. I don't know what's going to happen, man, but hopefully, like I said, everyone's able to stay safe. Raekwon Bell says, hey, Louie T, please wash your hands for 20 seconds. Don't touch your face. I'm a germaphobe anyway, so a lot of this stuff is common practice for me. You know what I mean? I'm more of a pound guy than a dap you up because I don't know where your hands have been. And I told you, working in the field that I work in and seeing the things that I see on a daily basis, it just reinforces just how disgusting and nasty people are. So I already am, and I'm one of the guys that has to take 5 pieces of paper towel down to dry my hands off. And that's another thing. When you wash your hands, actually dry your hands. Don't go with the whole, I'm going to manually shake my hands method, because sometimes germs aren't, they aren't washed off of your hands completely when you do that. So make sure you dry your hands thoroughly. And then I'm the guy that always opens the bathroom door with a paper towel, with 5 paper towels in my hand. The same paper towels I use to dry my hands off with, I'm opening the door with that as well. I don't know why more places don't force you to open the door going in and allow you to push your way out. To me, that's just how it should go. Open to go in, push to come out. So anyway, the 20th Mike says, if the NFL season gets canceled because it is, what will that do to guys that have 1-year contracts coming this season? I think they'll still be under contract. I don't think this season is going to get canceled. I know I've heard that from a bunch of people. I think by the time we get to July, let's think right now, we're in the 3rd month. You got 4 months to kind of get this thing to simmer down. I think the next 2 months are going to be pretty rough. And then I think by the time we get to June, you're going to start to see a downtick in this thing. And then by the time we get to July, I think we'll start to see there be some normalcy going on. And I think the NFL will be able to resume their activities without a hitch. So, but to answer your question, if a guy's on a 1-year deal and there's no football, he'll still be on that 1 year left on his contract. So that's generally how that goes. Reese says, this will pass. We will be okay. I believe with empathy for those affected. Likewise. I echo those sentiments. Said as much at the very beginning of this. But as you mentioned, and I didn't say this, but it does bear mentioning, this will pass. We will be okay. All right. We've seen things come and seen things go. We've been through a lot. And just in my short lifetime. And this will come and it will go, as I've seen a lot of things come and go. Jordan Like the GOAT says, when does the legal tampering period begin for the NFL? It's usually 2 days before free agency. If I'm not mistaken, free agency is on Wednesday, the 19th, or excuse me, the 17th, I think, the league year starts. Or it's either the 16th or the 17th. It's either the, so Wednesday is the 18th. Thursday is the 19th, right. So it's either the 18th on Wednesday or the 17th on Tuesday. I think it's the 18th on Tuesday, or Wednesday, excuse me, and then the tampering period would begin Monday. If it's on Tuesday, if the league year begins on Tuesday, then the tampering period would begin on Sunday. Either way, it's 48 hours before the start of the new league year, and that's when you'll start to hear these deals start to come out. Mr. TNA 2005 says, I just hope they do not do something with the draft because it's too great of 3 days. Draft can be great even without fans and only 40 people there. Absolutely. And that's why I said I don't see the draft really being impacted because you don't have to have fans. They used to do the draft every year without fans, without fanfare, without television cameras and all that good jazz. They used to just show up in a little hall and make the picks. And now that it's become big business to telecast the draft, you know, they've turned it into this big show, and that's fine. But you can still have the big show and have everything with the draft take place, just minus the fans and minus the players showing up. So I think that's what you're going to see happen, to be honest with you. So Mark Kempton says, so is there any chance this affects Trent Williams' negotiations? No, not at all. Again, if teams, right now what I'm hearing with the Trent situation is that teams aren't, it's not really the Redskins being, you know, hard asses about the compensation for Trent. It's teams trying to figure out what the asking price for Trent Williams is going to be. And if it's going to be a ridiculous number, they're not interested. So if Trent truly wants out, he's going to have to maybe compromise with one of these teams. He's not getting a $20 million per annual salary. He's just not. And if that number isn't, I think, more realistic, like maybe 16, maybe 17, somewhere in there, he's not getting a deal. And if he's not willing to compromise, he might be playing with the Redskins for $12 million this year, 12.5. So you could either take the 16 or the 15 someone's offering you with some guaranteed money up front, or you could settle for the 12.5 you're going to get from the Redskins this year. It's your choice. So if I'm Trent, it's not really a discussion to be had. It's just what's the best deal I can get in a situation that I don't mind stepping into. But you're either going to make this 12.5 from the Redskins that's non-guaranteed, which will turn into guaranteed money once the season starts, or you could get all of this guaranteed money up front on this brand new 3-year, $48 million deal, 16 per, and get, 25 of that guaranteed up front. Why not just do that? So we'll see what happens. Anyway, Reese says, I'm a homebody. I've been training for this my whole life. Dre121 B More says, will you be mocking every team this year? Yeah, I'm going to do a mock draft. My mock draft is usually about a month out from the draft. So it'll probably be sometime in April. I'm not going to lie to you. It'll probably be early April when I put out a mock. So be on the lookout for that. And you'll hear more about it as we get closer to the time when I'm ready to do it. But that being said, I'm going to glide to the side. I thank you guys for joining me. Just stay safe out there. Take all precautionary measures, as I've mentioned multiple times on this video. And more importantly, just know this. We will be fine. This shall pass. So just hold tight. Just hold tight. But I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'm not going to be impacted by Corona in terms of my content as long as I'm healthy, physically, and able-bodied. I'll be here turning it out as always. And so that's the beauty of what I do, is that I don't have to leave my house to bring you guys great content. So I'm going to continue to do that as long as I'm allowed to do that. So, you know, Lord willing, I'll be here blessing you guys with the best content on YouTube as usual, man. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not. I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys take care. Stay safe. Have a good one.
Louie T Network.